Well, here we are again, another Thursday, another episode of So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights live show. I'm Katie, joined by Chris and John. In today's episode, we're doing another Ask Me Anything session, this time focused on analytics. And we kept it pretty broad because analytics is a big topic, it's a big skill set, there's specialties within analytics. And so we really wanted to see what kinds of questions our Slack community had, our other communities had, and just sort of see where people were at and how, if and how we could be the most helpful in providing some practical advice or quick demos or those kinds of things. So that's what we're focusing on today is general questions about analytics. And Chris, I know you've been compiling a long list of questions because I'm sure you, as someone who's known in the industry as an analytics expert, gets asked questions all the time.
Yep. But these are, many of these are from our Slack community. Actually, I think almost all of them are. So let's go ahead and dig into these. Let's start with, and we'll do a little round robin and get some perspectives on a few of these questions. Hannah starts us off with, if you could only pick 3 KPIs to measure blog performance, which ones would you choose?
I would probably pick shared content. So how many times that piece of content is shared directly from your site, around the internet, whatever it is. Probably traffic to that page. No, that's not a good one. I take that back. I don't know. We just lost John. He ghosted us. I would want to know I guess engagement. So that's people sharing it. That's people how, if they read the entire thing. So maybe scroll depth, depending on how long it is. But probably also, something around my SEO in terms of, is it optimized in such a way that that's what people are finding me for? Am I bringing people to my assets, my site for that content?
Mm-hmm. That's a good mix. How about you, John?
Yeah, wearing the BizDev hat, I think the biggest 3 stats are closed one, and closed one.
So assisted conversion to conversion.
Right. Conversions, assisted conversions, and meetings with sales. Those are 3. I love it, Katie. I like the shared thing. I hadn't thought about that too much, but that's a big deal. If you have content that gets passed around a lot, that's a great stat to have.
I like that. I like it because to me it says I wrote something that people enjoyed and wanted other people to also get something from it. What about you, Chris?
I like, and you talked about this in this week's newsletter, having those 3 very basic buckets: awareness, engagement, conversion, right? So did blog posts, any of them, participate in conversions, right? That's obviously John's near and dear love, right? The engagement one I think is important, specifically time on page. If you know how many words are in a blog post, say there's a blog post is 600 words, that people's average reading speed is about 150 words per minute, give or take. Therefore, the time on page ideally should be about 3.5 minutes. If your time on page for your blog content is like 2 seconds, it ain't doing the job, right? People are going there and then just leaving. And of course, at the top of the funnel really is that the new users, right? Are you getting new users to your blog content? If you are, by any means, great. If you're not, then again, your blog content's not doing enough to attract people by any digital channel, not just search, but you're not getting social media content. You're not getting emails to drive traffic. Nothing's working to drive those users. So from a blog, if we had to narrow it down to 3, those would be the 3 that I would pick.
That makes sense. And so Do you think that, so you're talking about time on page. How does bounce rate compare to time on page? Which is a better metric?
Time on page is a better metric. Bounce rate is problematic. It is problematic for a variety of reasons. One, it is context insensitive. So it's okay for you to bounce off a blog post. You came, you read, you left. Great. I'm okay with that. If it's, I would not be okay with that, like on a landing page. Like that's a problem, because if you left and you didn't fill out the form, that's okay. But two, and this is especially true, this is one of the reasons why you no longer see bounce rate in Google Analytics 4, which is kind of an interesting thing. A bounce happens only when nothing happens and no event fires. But now with things like scroll depth, for example, if somebody scrolls and it triggers an event in Google Tag Manager that relays that to Google Analytics, it's no longer a bounce. So the moment you do anything that triggers any kind of event that pings Google Analytics says, hey, no, you did something. And we're like, no, you didn't do something, because you just scrolled once and you left, but it's no longer counted as a bounce. So time on page to me, I think, is more reliable.
Got it. I think that that's something that is going to continue to be a learning curve for people, because I know bounce rate has always been something that people have defaulted to, of like, well, we had a very low bounce rate, so it's a good page, but it doesn't give you enough information.
We have even seen cases where if somebody accidentally doubles up their analytics tracking code on their website, like they have the Google Analytics tag and they also put it in Tag Manager, your bounce rate goes to 0, because you now have 2 events happening at the same time. And that's not good. Okay, let's move on, because we have a long list to get through today. Brian asks, can you get easier ways to track and compare performance across digital channels? For example, if a tweet gets lots of engagement, I would like to be able to see how that engagement translates into other results. So what are your recommendations for tracking across channels?
Attribution modeling.
Digital customer journey.
Yeah. Some kind of attribution modeling. Even if you are using just a system like Google Analytics or another system like your CRM that has attribution modeling built in, assisted conversions will probably give you some of that information, as long as it's tied to a goal. But I think, we would obviously say our digital customer journey, our attribution model is probably more accurate than what you can get out of the box. But that's what I would default to, is if I want to know cross digital channels, I'm thinking of an attribution model.
John, what about you?
Yeah, that's what, all the work you've done as far as going beyond what Google can do, rather than just doing last touch or maybe based on 4 touches, grabbing all that data and doing some machine learning against it to find out what's relevant, regardless of where it falls in the funnel. And then being able to report where in the funnel those things hit. I mean, that's just a massive improvement over that. It's one thing to know that, well, these 5 programs show up all the time and they're our champions, but to be able to dial it down further and say, well, these are the ones that end up getting the meetings, and these are the ones that get people to sign up for the newsletter, and these are the ones that close deals. Then you can more strategically place your budget as far as, what do you need more of this year? Where where's the shortfall, and where do you have to allocate to get the best results across the board?
Yeah, attribution modeling definitely is close to as good an answer as most folks are likely to get. If you want to get very sophisticated, like if you are pretty sure that your tweets really matter, then you're probably going to want to do something that involves a little bit of data warehousing and putting all of your data in one place, like a Google BigQuery database, for example, and then running a big regression analysis. We've done this for a bunch of clients where they've got like billboard impressions and phone calls and people walking into stores, and doing that multiple regression to say, here's the outcome we care about. Of all the data you have, which columns alone or in combination have the highest mathematical relationship to that outcome? And then trying to figure that, because sometimes it is stuff like, the number of feet who walk in the door actually does really matter, particularly if you're, a click and mortar business. You not having that information would be really, really a big mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Stephanie asks, what is going to be an important social media analytics trend to watch in 2022?
It might be considered an anti-trend, but I don't know. I don't know that trend is the right word, but I think the thing to look for in social media is diversification. So people are going to be moving away from relying on the quote unquote tried and true big four, which is, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. I'm seeing more and more people boycott and move away from Facebook, which by then extension, they're moving away from Instagram because Facebook owns Instagram. Um, LinkedIn ads are still really expensive, and you need to understand how the algorithms work on both LinkedIn and Twitter in order to make them work for you for your benefit. So I think what we're going to start to see is smaller, more niche social platforms becoming more relevant. I wouldn't call TikTok a small platform, but I would call it almost kind of like a niche platform because I feel like it's still a very specific audience for a very specific purpose, but more and more people are signing up and getting on board with it. So how can you, as a marketer, think about where that works into your brands and your company's plan? But I think there's going to be a lot of other social networks that people are going to turn to as they move away from, the giant ones. So that's my trend prediction. Big quotations.
I'm still betting heavily on influencers. I think that there's so much going on with, YouTube and Instagram and other channels like that, dumping hundreds of millions of dollars into these content creators who are amassing their own audiences of millions of people. And I think that's going to be a great alternative for a lot of brands to, instead of spending more on ads that are now less effective than ever before, to get in front of the right audience that's qualified and is more on target for the brand. So I think spending is going to continue to shift on that front. The big question for me is programmatic ads. We're losing a lot of tracking, but yet I don't know if you believe a lot of what the programmatic people are saying. It's you can still do well with machine learning targeted ads where you just set them up and the system runs. But that will have to prove itself over the next year. Is when you put the money in, do you actually get the quality conversions or not? And I think the jury's still out on all that.
Yep. Okay, it's interesting because neither one of those really were analytics trends for social media. Those were for more general social media trends. But I think they're both absolutely valid. From an analytics perspective, we have a data blindness problem, right? So the amount of data you can get out of these platforms continues to get smaller and smaller and smaller. LinkedIn, basically it boils down to this: with social media, unless you're paying, you're not getting data, right? You can't get LinkedIn data, much more than what you're doing on your page. You still get good data out of Twitter, but Twitter is, a much more of a niche audience actually than TikTok is. Twitter has 300 million users. TikTok has 1.5 billion. So if there's anything that's a niche, it would be Twitter. Facebook, you can't get organic Facebook data other than your own page anymore, and even that's not great. Instagram, TikTok, you can't get, again, stuff except what is in your app. So if you're trying to do any kind of industry or competitive analysis, it is really, really hard to do that now. And then you have this whole raft of new networks, right? You have things like Clubhouse, you have, and Twitter Spaces, you have decentralized social like the Dezo project, you have private social like Discord and Slack and Mattermost. All of these services don't give you any data, like none. So one of the big challenges that we're gonna have to face in terms of analytics is you've got less data to work with than ever. So it means you have to rely on a bunch of new data sources. Number one, you're going to have to start surveying. You're going to have to start running surveys to your audience. There's no way around it anymore. You have to be asking people questions because you're not going to get the information any other way. Two, you have to have really good tracking governance, because if you're not putting tracking codes on everything, everywhere, you're blind. You're not going to see that data, especially as cookies continue to get throttled down. That URL-based tracking is all we've got left. And three, one of the things I think that is a strategic change for marketers who have got to figure it out. This is not true of large enterprise companies, but it's definitely true of mid-market and below. We've got to get away from the mindset of bigger is better. Better is better. Like, we have a Slack community with about 2,000 or so people in it, right? This is not a huge audience. This is not going to, light up any prizes, for social media audience size, but it's the right 2,000 people. And for us, as we, look at our social media strategy, we continue to focus on, are we getting in front of the right people? Truth be told, if you're an enterprise B2B company, say like you sell security software or hardware, you only need 50 people in your social network, as long as those 50 are the 50 CIOs of the Fortune 50, right? That's really all you need as a social network. You don't need much more than that. But in marketing, one of the things we're stuck on is that bigger is better. Okay, let's move on. Stephanie asks, content marketers often default to using vanity metrics because they're easy to track and understand. But if you want to prove to your boss that your content is making an impact on business results, what metrics do you recommend using instead?
So let's first be clear on how we're defining vanity metrics. So Chris, I know you recently wrote a post about, stop hating vanity metrics. What do you consider to be vanity metrics?
Vanity metrics are numbers that don't have a correlation to your business result, which means you got to do the math first.
So like number of followers and.
Yep. Well, so for example, with my personal website, number of Twitter followers is not a vanity metric because it does have a strong correlation to the number of people who sign up for my newsletter. So for me, that's not a vanity metric. Now for Trust Insights, it is. It has no correlation to our newsletter signups. So even though it's the same metric, in one place it is a vanity metric and in one place it is not.
So vanity metrics is really going to depend business by business. And so using the term vanity metric is problem number one. That makes sense. And so the question that Stephanie is asking is, what metrics should you care about in content marketing? And so I would say it really depends on what your goal is. Why are you writing content in the first place? For us, for Trust Insights, we write and share content to help answer questions, but also secondarily to demonstrate our expertise in the questions being asked so that people can say, oh, Trust Insights knows what they're talking about. I can probably hire them to help me solve my problems as well. So it's twofold. It's to be helpful and to get people to hire us. So that's our goal for creating content. So I would say that's where you really need to start is, why are you creating the content in the first place? There's plenty of companies that don't have a blog, that don't have content other than the content that's on the pages of their website. And so it really just depends on why you're doing it in the first place. And I'd say that's really the place to start. And from there, you start to build the KPI map. So if your goal is revenue and you're using content, then you need to figure out where content fits in terms of your customer journey. Is it an awareness tool? Is it an engagement tool? Is it a conversion tool? And so if it's an awareness tool, you need to write it and then share it everywhere so that everybody knows about you, who you are, what you do, and write it from that introductory standpoint. If it's an engagement tool, maybe it's gated, maybe it's original research, maybe it's something of value that people would sign up for and give you their contact information for. And if it's conversion, well, maybe putting it on your website is not the right place. Maybe it belongs in an exclusive newsletter. Maybe it belongs somewhere else that only people who sign up for it can get it, kind of a thing. So that's where I would start with content marketing, is why are you doing it in the first place?
Yep. John, what about you? What you're the boss of Marketing Over Coffee, and you have a clear business result, right? Which is getting people to sponsor the show. What do you look at that helps you determine, yep, we're going to make our sponsorship numbers, or no, we're not? And what do you change to get bigger, better dollars out of sponsors?
Yeah, it's really, the thing with that is it's always been driven by quality of content. Like, I really do next to nothing for the sponsors when you think about it. I mean, the idea is that, I know, it's a double-edged sword. There's more to it. That I don't just say, sponsors, you suck, give me money. I mean, there's a lot more to that. It's, we deliver the right audience to them, and that's a really important thing, because there are all these people that will advertise on podcasts and they're like, yeah, we'll give you $30 1,000, but our audience is worth $500 1,000, because it is the right people. If you want to talk to marketing people that are dealing with 10 or more cloud solutions, you're not going to find they're going to be a needle in the haystack over on the Joe Rogan show, but our whole audience is made up of those people. So yeah, for us, it's always been about quality content. We want to make content that's educational and entertaining, so the audience stays on board. And unfortunately, the topic is so niche that if someone listens to our show, we know they're the right kind of person for these sponsors, because the rest of my family has no interest in listening to us go on about attribution models for a half an hour on Thursday. So yeah, quality content has always been at the heart of it. And and we are a small business. I think that's an important thing, where sometimes vanity metrics are all you've got. If you have enough staff so you can start to build attribution models and do all the tracking that you want to do, then you can grow away from the vanity metrics. But for now on, it's as long as the numbers are always going up and there's more engagement, more listeners, and there'll be more. And we do see that the sponsors get more qualified leads. So those all move in the right direction. But it's still, it's a lot of tea leaves. And like the worst part is like when numbers dip, it's like, well, what happened? Oh, I have no clue. We have no idea what the hell happened when the numbers move in one direction or the other. Maybe once in a while, if they go up, we know that, oh, we got cited here or there. We got an inbound link that was good. But yeah, it's just interesting how much of it is flying blind. It's a vanity metric does beat nothing. It's not great. And it, maybe you can't draw the connection to closed business directly, but at least twice as many people came around. I think, but the big fear that has changed so much with digital marketing is that it's so easy to fake the vanity metrics. Like if I really wanted to, I can go buy 5,000 Twitter followers for $12 over on Fiverr. And I don't understand how that works, but somehow I can spend $12 on Fiverr, and, you can make the numbers move. And so that's one of the big fears with vanity metrics is like, yeah, we're just getting bamboozled here. But, I don't know. I don't see any way around that. You just, slowly over time, as you ramp up and get more savvy, you're able to put more resources towards it and do just better analytics.
Yep. Cool. Dominic has one I think is very interesting. I'm going to throw this to Katie first. What does success look like when you're tracking influence and education versus explicit lead generation? This is more of a B2B marketing question.
Success, it's subjective. It really depends on, you first have to define what success looks like to you. So if we take influence and education first as the question, then I would say, you could say broad stroke success there looks like, engagement. It looks like retention. It looks like people sharing, your stuff because it was worthwhile. Sales conversion, is what it is. It's people going to your stuff and saying, I want to hire you. I want to buy this thing. And so it's more of a direct line of why they're coming to you, why they're coming to your assets. But I feel like education and influence is like a constant cycle of sharing and learning and growing. I personally, for B2B specifically, I think influence is really an awareness and engagement tool versus a conversion tool.
John, what about you?
Yeah, I think, you can see views and shares. And if you get SEO value out of it, if it's a worthwhile training resource, you should see some SEO action from it, some ongoing, evergreen inbound traffic, which is the holy grail for that stuff. But yeah, that falls squarely into the leap of faith stuff. You're going to put a bunch of stuff together and throw it out there and just pray that it flies. Really the only thing that you can do to give yourself some kind of a fighting edge is, if you're dealing with your customers or prospects and that this is the kind of material that they need, you can at least increase your odds and give yourself a better shot. But yeah, I don't know. It's still, again, use UTM links in all of your stuff. And yeah, even though it's educational, that doesn't mean that all of the normal goals don't apply and tracking. So I don't, see how you really have to treat training much differently from everything else that you're doing.
I
Yeah,
think
I
we
think you hit the
typically
nail on the head.
I think we typically think about influencers in the B2C space. And so, you know, fashion people and sports people saying, like, I use this sports drink or I wear this brand of clothing. That is more of that conversion versus an awareness. Whereas in B2B, the services and the things are not as tangible. And so it does, at least in my opinion, it does tend to be more of an awareness tool of like, hey, you know, this person endorses us. So therefore, you could probably learn about what we do as and how we helped that person as well.
Exactly. John hit the nail on the head, which is it's not an either or. It's not influence or leads, right? Because one has to lead to the other. If it doesn't, then you've got a bigger problem. But one of the favorite brand measurement tools / influence measurement tools that I love is good old fashioned branded search, right? If people are not searching for your company or its products or services by name, you're not getting the job done, right? There's no good brand stuff. So we want to see branded searches going up. And if you roll out an influencer campaign of some kind, or you roll out an educational campaign of some kind, and you don't see this number move upwards, it didn't work, because people still don't remember who you are or still don't feel compelled enough to just Google for you by name. Now, you also will probably want to do a little bit of correlation with direct traffic, because again, if you did a really good job branding, people don't need to search for you. They just type in your domain name and go straight there. So there's that aspect too. But brand or organic search is one of those things I feel like everybody just misses. Like they just forget that it exists, and it's there, and it's just so valuable. If you work, especially in public relations or brand advertising, and you're not using branded organic search data as a KPI, today's a great day to start.
Today's a great, don't wait until January 1st. No new year, no new you. Start today.
Yep. We have a live question here from Monty Consulting. It says, growing our research capabilities, welcome thoughts on resources for reaching specific audiences with surveys. Katie, you want to tackle one first?
Sure. I feel like that's the thing that eludes people a lot of like, how do I get that specific audience? And so, you know, you can run a Gen Pop survey through something like a Google Surveys, or you can use a screener question like, you know, do you work in X industry? Yes, no. And if no, then, you know, thank you for their time. But if yes, you know, so there's ways to handle it with, you know, off the shelf tools. But a better way to reach those audiences is to become part of those communities. So, Chris, I know you like to, you've been doing a lot of research into what you call the velvet rope communities. And it's really those niche communities like the Slack group that we've been growing for, you know, marketers who talk about analytics and data science. If you wanted to do a survey with those people, you would first need to become part of that community and then work with the owners of that community to say, is it appropriate for me to run a survey to these people? This is what I want to do. And so it needs to be a collaboration with the community owners, but those communities exist. So I would say step number one is, you know, figure out who that audience is that you're trying to reach. Step number two is become a part of that community. So you're not just showing up and asking something of the community, but actually participate, and then work with the owners of the community to say, is this appropriate? Is this the right community? You know, can I do this, you know, with the people who've like you've built trust with? So that's how I would approach it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think the other thing is that the question assumes that you've already done your qualitative research. And it sounds like if you aren't sure where the specific audience is, you haven't done enough qualitative research. So focus groups, one-on-one interviews and things like that. And asking people, hey, where do you spend your time? Like when you want to talk shop, where do you do it? Right? I don't care where you spend your leisure time necessarily. But if you're trying to figure out like, hey, I'm hiring a new analytics consulting firm. Who do you ask? Where do you go? And talking to people and that can give you a sense of exactly what you were saying, Katie, those specific communities. Some of them you may have to pony up a whole lot of money. Like you may, if it's a certain specific audience, you may need to be spending a lot of money on a golf course membership, because guess what? That's where the audience spends their time talking shop. That's one of the things. I have heard of folks who have literally just booked flights, first class flights, just to see who they sit next to, or fractional chartered private jets, just to be able to talk to some of the highest powered CEOs, because it's the only time you can get time on their calendars. Otherwise, they're not interested. They're unavailable. When you want to talk to the CEO of like T-Mobile or something, you're probably going to have to pony up for at least first class seating to sit next to the person, but then you get that uninterrupted time with them. After that, the question is whether you even need a survey. So if you're doing the top 50 CIOs, do you need a survey for all 50 of them? No, you can probably call 10 of them and get enough information to be able to make some decent decisions, get to know them.
I can't wait until I'm a high-powered CEO who people can only get time with me and if on my private jet. Like, that's a goal. That's a new goal that I'm going to write down and manifest it somewhere.
The other thing is that there may be communities where you are in a non-traditional community, and guess what? Again, you have to be able to integrate into that community. A number of years back, there was a fantastic article in, I think it was Fortune magazine, saying like, is World of Warcraft the new golf course? Because for some of the the tech CEOs of the time is where they spent their leisure time. I will tell you in advance, no, it's not. but there absolutely are things like, say ranked tournaments in Apex Legends or Fortnite or some of these other games where you have people who are, that's where they spend their leisure time. Now whether they want to talk shop there, that's a different question, but certainly if you want to know where they hang out, that's a great one. So it's a great question. Let's dig back into the question pile. This is a fun one. Kathy asks, what is Google Analytics tracking that we're not taking advantage of that is ripe with actionable data? I love that question.
I feel like you just covered some of it, which is branded search. How are people finding you? So I feel like there's that. I know that that's more Search Console than Google Analytics, but I see them sort of as like part of the same ecosystem. You can do pretty good attribution modeling directly in Google Analytics. So you can figure out like what channels are working best for you based on the goals that you have set up. So I would say that's probably one of the things that's overlooked the most. The most common use case I've seen in terms of, our clients and in my experiences, people are looking at in terms of, was the goal completed? Yes, no. Did I drive more traffic? Yes, no. And I feel like that sort of diminishes all of the other things that Google Analytics collects.
John, how about you?
Yeah, I would just say, you don't have enough goals set up. You're using UTM codes wrong, and your channels are messed up. You need to clean those up. Like those are the big three. People think they're looking at the right kind of data, and when they're making decisions based on this stuff, no, it's actually, amazingly, Google ads look like they're really killing it no matter what happens. Well, that's probably not the case. So go back and clean it up and talk to somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yep. One of my favorites, I guess, in Google Analytics, specific to Google Analytics 4, is that attribution / funnel view. It's if you go into advertising and you go into conversion paths, and let's pick a conversion event here. Let's just leave them all on. That's fine. And we're going to change from last click to a time decay model. This to me is so incredibly valuable to be able to look at what's happening within your funnel, at the beginning of the funnel, the middle of the funnel, at the end of the funnel, for the goals that you care about, and to know if there's a difference in the channels, so that you can say, like, just looking at this is something we talked about actually on previous episode of our podcast, Katie. Our top and middle of funnel is empty, right? Mm-hmm. We have some very serious issues to deal with, which we're working on remediating, and we see the bottom of the funnel is really, really full. And so this immediately tells us we need to do a lot more stuff at the top of the funnel to keep things rolling. But in terms of just an attribution modeling, this is as long as your UTM tracking is good, this is a really powerful hidden gem, I think, in Google Analytics 4 that almost nobody uses. And it tells you a lot, and it tells you things you can take action on. Okay. Let's finish up with one last one here. We have actually like 10 more, but we'll finish up with the last one so we don't go on forever. Allison asks, what is your go-to number for gauging content marketing performance? The one that all teams should pay attention to, even if it's the only thing they look at. So now we've gone from 3 KPIs down to 1. What is the one number that you think people should look at for content marketing performance?
The pressure is on. I mean, that's a tough question to answer because it really depends on why you're doing it in the first place. And so that's really the question. You have to answer that question first, because there is no one size fits all answer, because why we do content marketing is different from why, our friend Jenny Dietrich does content marketing, is different from why our friends at B Squared does content marketing, is different from why, some of our clients do content marketing. So that's it's almost like a trick question. So it's like, why are you doing the content marketing in the first place? Then you can figure out what that one metric is, because it's going to feed up into that goal. So that's my not, super clear answer, but you got to know why you're doing it in the first place. And then you can figure out that one number. Now, if I, was like pinned to the ground and couldn't move, and someone said, you have to tell me what the metric is, I would probably say, an engagement number, something around how many times is this piece of content being shared.
John, how about you?
Come on, man. Closed one. Cocoa is for closers. Step away from the coffee.
Okay, then. From a content perspective, one of the hidden secrets, too, of Google Analytics, and this is Google Analytics 3 now, is page value. So if your goals contain a dollar amount in them, even if it's just like $1, right? You say like a newsletter sign-up's worth $1. As long as there's a dollar amount, then what Google Analytics does, and they have this explained in their documentation about how they calculate page value. If you have a goal, then it starts to basically spread out the value of that goal across the different pages it took to get there. And you can read this in the Google Analytics documentation. If I go to our behavior, go to site content, let's go to all pages, and let's really go back maybe like a few months here, just get a nice big picture. And I'll sort by page value here. You can start to find like this influencer identification walkthrough has a higher value. Like obviously the contact page, yeah, okay, that's kind of a given. This services page has higher value. This blog post has higher value. This is not as good as you like using a more fancy machine learning model like Markov chain modeling for assessing it. But if you don't have anything else, the page value computation is actually really good, because it says this page has contributed to economic value as part of that path towards conversion. And so those are pages that you might want to pay some attention to. So if I had to pick just one number, it would be that number. But you got to set it up right.
Mm-hmm. Let's do one more question, Chris.
One more question. Okay. Here's one from Tiffany as I think an easy winner. What too often analytics gets lost in the weeds. No one wants that. What metrics should leadership actually care about? John, we already know it's closed one. So
why do you keep asking me this?
Yeah. Again, I always have to go back to, what's the goal? And so if you can safely assume that for the majority of companies, the goal is going to be revenue, then as you're looking in your Google Analytics, just as an example, as one system of record, you probably want to look at the goals that are tied to people buying something. So that's the contact us form. That's the, fill out your information if you want a free demo form. So those would be the metrics to start to look at but then also sort of breaking it out into the, the three chunks of your funnel. So, a simple awareness metric is people actually coming to your website. If people know about you, they're going to come to your website. So that number should continue to go up. Engagement might be looking at, people coming back to your website. So retention, so return users. So you start with net new users, then you have return users, and then you have people who buy something. So if you have nothing else, I would say that would be a good 3 places to start to build out a funnel that would lead back to your overall goal of sales.
Yep. I would say for leadership, well, for you, whoever you are, what number do you get your bonus for? You should care about that. What number does your boss get their bonus for? Right. And those are kind of the things that you've got to report on, because, and if you want to be generous and look up the ladder, depending on how far you're looking up, what number does your boss's boss get their bonus for? That to me is the easiest way to suss out what should be in your reporting, because ultimately nobody cares unless it benefits them in some way. Obviously there's the whole, corporate governance and all that stuff, but really at the end of the day, like, the CEO is held accountable for revenue. Like, if the company didn't make money, you're in a lot of trouble, right? The CFO is held. The CFO is held to things like margin, right? Are we profitable? If we're not, you may be making money, but if we're not profitable, it's kind of a lost cause. The chief sales officer, it's closed won deals, right? That's what the
makes the world go round, baby.
Exactly. So that's the easiest way to answer that question: is who are the leaders? What are they getting their bonuses for? And are you reporting on that? And you're reporting on that number and the 1 or 2 numbers that lead to that number. And if you're not, chances are nobody's reading your reporting.
Agreed. I think the big takeaway there, which, I really hate to say that this is sort of the PSA of it, is that at the end of the day, we all have some degree of narcissism. We're all selfish to a certain degree. And so first and foremost, we care about the things that are going to affect us first. And so to Chris's point, find out what that is from your leadership team and build that report.
Exactly. So we covered a lot here. There's even more to be covered, more questions to be answered. So if we didn't cover your question on today's show, we will probably on another show, or in a newsletter, or in a blog post, or in our free Slack group, Analytics for Marketers. But no matter where it was, thank you for your participation. Thanks to the folks who are on live and asking questions live. We love that. And we will be back next week. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast, and a weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. See you next time.